Some folks are going to be catching their replay. And again, use the chat, please. Let us know where you're calling from. That's always good to know. And just be connected in this big, big world that we're in. Thank you so much for tuning in into this important and very vital conversation, especially right now, more than ever. We're starting to pay attention to our mental health, our well-being, and really normalizing these conversations. So I'm excited to have our amazing guest speakers today um, and chat about this. So again, I want to introduce myself. My name is Marina Jova Rex, and I'm representing Nevada Coalition for Psychedelic Medicines. We're here to really champion the legalization of psychedelic assisted therapy and the reduction of penalties. And we'd love to do so with collaboration. That's what we're doing here tonight, having these types of conversations, a lot of education and policy reform. And we're really uniting to have the conversations to save lives and revolutionize mental health. Um, and I want to really mention that we are currently in preparation for our upcoming legislative session, and your support and contribution is really crucial. So we really invite you to participate, stay in touch with us through social media and our newsletter. There will be a lot of momentum in the next upcoming months, and we'd love to see you there. And please consider donating for tonight's event, again, to support the legislation efforts. And I'm going to make sure that we pin our some of these links here in the chat so you have the ability to do so. And I also want to give a big shout out to our sister organization, Sierra Psychedelic Society, the 501(c)(3) nonprofit that is dedicated for education and building community, reducing risk management around psychedelic medicines. And the big thing here is really building community and having these conversations and doing the integration work. Sierra Psychedelic Society is doing incredible things here in Reno, Northern Nevada. All right, thank you so much. Yeah, the links are in the chat. And again, welcoming everyone here. Without further ado, I'm going to introduce again the topic for tonight is mental health, psychedelic therapy solutions for veterans, first responders, and their families. We want to really pioneer and talk about destigmatizing mental health tonight and enhancing it through psychedelic therapies. We'll talk about the therapy solutions for first responders and veterans. Who is it for, the benefits and the safety protocols. And really, we cannot emphasize on the integration work. Again, use the Q&A, the question in the chat here, and hopefully we'll have some room for questions. And I'm going to introduce our first guest and speaker, Ben Strand. Thank you for being here, Ben. I'm going to bring you on and pin you. There you are. Thanks for being here. Yay, Ben. Ben is a wildland firefighter, hotshot father, and a psychedelic guy. And you're incredible. I met you a couple of weeks ago or last month, and your presence is so palpable in the room. You walk in a room with a lot of presence, courage, and your story has a way of touching people's hearts so deeply. So thank you so much for being here today, being on a mission, and all the work that you've done to be here in the now.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. It's a beautiful honor.
hmm Again, I want to really thank you for being here. And we'll kick it off. We don't have a ton of time, so I'll kick it off right away with how did you get started on this mission for advocating for psychedelic medicines?
Mm, yeah, it really started post in 2000, well, in 2020, I had a very, very long fire season. It was very intense. And along with beginning this journey of understanding who I am and stepping into that, I came through an experience where I tried to commit suicide. And I was very nervous and reluctant to walk towards like modern medicine and be diagnosed with something.
Mm,
And again, I preface it with like that a lot of those things work for people for sure. And I've seen it work for people. But for me, I was scared. I didn't want to be on lifelong medication. And so I chose to look elsewhere.
yeah.
And unfortunately, I had to travel out of the country to get the help that I needed. And I participated in a psilocybin ceremony. And the medicine really just gave me a key to a door. And that door, behind that door was a bunch of realizations of things I already knew. And so it provided me context and understanding and direction on how to point my life in a different way. And really what inspired me to start advocating for it wasn't so much the healing that I got so much from that experience, but it was seeing myself, my old self, and other people,
Hmm.
and seeing that there was opportunity
Hmm.
to open up a space for others to become curious about a different solution potentially. And
Hmm.
that's really how it kind of started for me.
Mm. Thank you for sharing that. And you already had, when that experience happened, you already had kids, an established career. And again, since I met you, you walk in life with a guy who's super fit. I think you're a personal trainer as well, or you were, right? So like you're fit, you're brilliant. Like you can tell that you're a man who walks this world with a lot of strength and confidence and resilience. So that's just an incredible story to share because we never know. And I think that's one of the things that I heard you say is that you're not alone. And
Mhm.
that just opens up the conversation to other people to look into their mind and heart, what's going on. So, what is that entry door? Because I know you share that message with your teams, teammates, and coaching as well that you do. So, what is that doorway to um, open up and share some of the stories that can be stigmatized around mental health?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, for me, all of this starts with the awareness of courage. I think a lot of us are reluctant to make the steps towards understanding and awareness because we're afraid of what it's going to show us. And sometimes sometimes people are reluctant to share their stories or share where they're at or even specifically just reach out to somebody and be honest with where they find themselves. And for me, like it took me kind of asking questions, honestly, knowing, like, being honest with myself and knowing that the life that I had been living was just missing an essence of something.
Mm-hmm.
Just missing this essence. It wasn't a bad life. It wasn't a horrible life. Like, I had plenty of things. I remember walking around and like, wow, I got a house and a trailer and a nice truck and all this stuff. It's like, ooh, but it's not making me very happy. Like, what's the thing that I'm missing here? And so it started with a question. And then I spent basically a decade asking questions, like on this crazy search for wisdom,
Mm-hmm.
and being extremely curious and meeting beautiful people on the same path as me and or on a very similar path anyways, and kind of developing a community and then coming to a place of understanding where wisdom is just truth being expressed through your being.
Mm-hmm.
And coming to that place is really where I've landed recently and has opened up this new way of looking at life and letting the goodness that we're seeking in. And it really has created this another opportunity of seeing others as has seen myself, and learning how to become a person who holds space in a way that allows people to feel safe. Because I think at the end of the day, it's service that really brings the people um, to their own truth.
Hmm.
It's the expression of vulnerability breeds more vulnerability.
Yeah.
You know, the more vulnerable you are, the more you can do it, the more comfortable it becomes. And then you're just acting within your authentic self.
Hmm.
That authenticity is like a moth to a light. And so getting to the door, part courage, part me making the choice to do that,
Hmm.
also part seeing people that were living in that truth and providing that space for me to feel comfortable in that expression, to tell my story, to tell people that, I'm not doing okay, and to be gifted guidance.
Hmm. Hmm. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. It's that courage and vulnerability to open up. And what I'm hearing also is it's having the courage to have that conversation with oneself first, right? And it's almost like there is this like intuitive knowing that there's something better, there's something else is available for me, which is amazing because psychedelics have this incredible intelligence in them as well. They just point you and guide you to discovering what that is.
But
uh,
let me tell you, to get there, sometimes it ain't that easy. It's like you can have all the courage you want. Like it's still hard. Like I often tell people, like, if you are getting ready to walk this path, like, be prepared.
mhm,
It's not easy. It really isn't. Like, there's plenty of people that do this once or twice, and that's great. And they get what they need, and that's all they need. And I have blessings for those people. My journey has been much different. It has been crossroad after crossroad of pain, so
mhm,
much pain, so much confronting the inner workings of my soul, that the pieces that do not fit anymore, and confronting those and looking them in the face, and fighting them sometimes, and then
mhm,
surrendering, and then surrendering again,
mhm,
and understanding that there's immense power in pain. And to really get to the place of beauty in your soul and your life, you have to walk through the dark stuff. And eventually you get comfortable with it. Eventually you can recognize that this pain is here to teach me.
mhm,
And in the surrender of that pain, it brings you back to harmony, brings you back to being centered, and brings you back to the truth.
mhm. Yeah, when you say those words, there's power in pain. I can just feel that there's a lived, like integrated experience when you say that. It's not just a word, a phrase, but it's
Mhm.
a lived experience that you're conveying. And that makes me lean into that and like be courageous enough. Because I think a lot of us are just numbing life or being comfortable or avoiding pain, right? Things are not that bad. So we're kind of like not living at the fullest, but we're avoiding something where we're somewhere existing, but we're not really thriving or tapping into the highest potential there. Um,
Mhm.
so trusting that there was power beyond that pain is incredible what you're saying. Any tips for that?
Yeah, I think it's just, I mean, I really do believe that there is an art and there's a practice in surrender. Like I say it like this, life is a circle, and we exist in the center sometimes. In that centeredness, there's harmony. We're
Mhm,
not always like that, though. As we deviate from the truth, this centeredness, we start to experience something called dis-ease. As we get further and further away from that centeredness, away from that harmony, that dis-ease, the outcome of dis-ease is pain. The more we accelerate, the more we move away from that and touching the edges, the more pain we feel. And then we're confronted with a choice. And that
mhm,
choice is to surrender.
mhm,
Unfortunately, a lot of us take our life. That's the choice we make. And then we're back into the harmony, and everything's clear.
mhm,
But we
mhm,
also can make the choice of coming back to harmony on our own by
mhm,
choosing to surrender to what is happening. And
mhm,
there's great value in the lesson behind that pain. And it brings us back to harmony in our life and tells us how to live now.
mhm, mhm. Wow. Thank you. Yeah, surrender is like is the mind will resist. It's like not that. It's fighting for solutions and keeping something afloat. But really, the surrender is a great place. Yeah. Thank you, Ben.
Mhm.
Um, Anything else that you feel called you want to share with us? How can people stay in touch with you? What's going on in your life currently that you want to offer or bring attention into?
Sure. I think just the last thing to say is like it's easy to talk about the darkness. It's easy to talk about the pain and all the struggles and all the stuff. But on the opposing side of that is so much beauty.
Mhm,
There's so many blessings, there's so many gifts to be had. You know, life is rooting for us. It wants us to win. It wants us to be a part of this, living in that harmony. And I think for me, it's like having lived through so much of that pain and some of that dis-ease and of nature, like I find myself now in a beautiful place of harmony and sharing love with my partner and all the beings that I get to encounter in this life. And it's a really great place to be.
mhm,
And yes, to find me, you can find me at momentconsultingllc.com. My email is ben at momentconsultingllc.com. So if
mhm,
people want to reach out to that, I do motivational speaking and I talk a lot about self-leadership for corporations and organizations and teams and such. So if people are interested in something like that, I'm available there.
mhm, mhm. Thank you. I'm just reading the comment here in the chats from Colorado. They're asking, is there a stigma attached to others? No, you're doing this work with plant medicine within the wildland fire first responder community.
Sure. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, there's a stigma for sure. I mean, that's what this event is kind of all about. Part of it, right, is to start to break some of that stigma down. I think that the mindset is changing, for sure. It's people are becoming more aware of these practices and these medicines and how they can help people and assist people. But yeah, there's a stigma there.
Mhm,
I encounter those all the time and I approach them gently with the idea of providing perspective and not telling people they're wrong.
mhm, mhm. Beautiful. Thank you
Yeah.
so much, Ben. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for
Yeah. Thank
having
you.
these conversations. We appreciate your work so much. We will be following up with all of our attendees and participants with all the links, and they can be in touch with you. Thank you so much. Keep up the
Take
good
care.
work. Yeah,
See ya.
amazing. All right. All right. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Without further ado, we have our next guest speaker, Dr. Lance. I'm going to bring you on here. Thank you so much for tuning all the way from Buffalo Creek, Colorado. Um, Double board certified functional medicine doctor with 40 years of experience in peer support, mental wellness coaching, and performance optimization. And you are also former Special Forces communications sergeant and Army infantry officer. Grateful, thankful, father, husband. Thank you so much, Dr. Lance, for tuning in here. Yeah, I want to also highlight that you're trauma informed and focusing on guiding those struggling with TBIs, PTS, suicidal ideation, moral injury, depression, anxiety, substance misuse, all the things. Thank you so much for making the time and being here on this conversation with us.
Well,
How are you?
thank you so much for having me. It's really an honor to be a part of this.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much. Again, I want to open this up and you have so much experience and a wealth of knowledge. I wanted to just kick it off with what is mental health? I think it changed so much throughout the years. I remember we used to talk about mental illness, but right
Mhm.
now we're really leading with mental wellness and mental health. What is your general understanding or deep understanding of it?
Well, I approach overall wellness as really a three-legged stool. You've got the physical, physiological aspect of your wellness. You've got the mental, emotional, psychological aspect, and then you've got the spiritual, slash community. And spiritual isn't particular religious dogma. It's just being connected to that which is bigger than you, whether you want to call it your soul, your spirit, the love, the light, the energy, whatever your vernacular. It's that which um, fuels us, that existed before we started this iteration in this biological vehicle and will exist after we leave, whatever that looks like for you. And bringing all of those into balance in a place where the software functions optimally, I guess is what I would call mental wellness if we want to look at a software, hardware operator, yeah, aspect of who we are.
Yeah.
And so the operator is the soul, the software is the mental wellness, and the hardware is this biological vehicle that we're piloting around.
Mm,
So so mental wellness, I really like that much more than mental illness because we find what we're looking for. So if we're looking for mental wellness, we will find wellness. If we're looking for mental illness, we will find illness. So even the neurolinguistic programming of how we speak about it is really having a positive impact on destigmatizing and bringing it more into conversation.
Thank you. Thank you. That's great. And then with your experience, with your work and also working maybe first responders, veterans, what are you noticing that are their unique mental health challenges that they're facing themselves or their families as well?
By and large, I would say the vast majority of those that I work with experience childhood trauma. That almost seems to be a prerequisite for being in the special operations community and first responder and law enforcement. And I believe, yeah, at least in my case, I can speak from the first person here. I believed that if I went off and did something heroic, that it would somehow balance or level things. I would find that validation, I would find that healing, or even if I couldn't find the healing for myself, I could potentially prevent it for others. Prevent that kind of wounding and injury for others. And so we go into it with, I do believe that hearts that are deeply wounded are some of the most caring and end up going into those lines of service to protect and to better society. So and then ultimately to there was a metaphor that was given to me that I really appreciate, and I think this will illustrate the point. If you've ever been to the beach and you've seen a bed of seaweed out in the water, and sometimes you'll be sitting on the beach and that bed of seaweed will come and it'll go by, and sometimes you'll see a big kelp bed that'll just stay and it seems to get bigger and bigger and bigger. Well, if you go in under the static kelp beds and look, there are there are water plants that are rooted into the ocean floor, and the seaweed will wrap around those water plants, and that kelp bed will stay and stay and stay. And one of my early mentors described to me, and he said, trauma is like the seaweed. Um, the trauma will come, it'll occupy a space in your psyche for a period of time, and it'll move on. If you have childhood trauma, that's like those water plants on the ocean floor. And so trauma later in life will capture you will latch on to those water plants and it'll stay present. And so you can row your little boat out there and pull one strand of seaweed at a time and throw it into the ocean, and you can eventually deconstruct it. Or you can swim underneath and you can pull up those water plants by the roots. And if you can pull up those roots that are holding it, then the whole thing can move past. And so the majority of those that I work with have a fair number of water plants that are rooting the trauma that they've endured in the present and in it, and they're not able to allow it to move past. And so a lot of the work we do is going back in and addressing those early traumas so that then everything else can move along.
Beautiful. Thank you. Yeah, trauma is so tricky and runs so deep. And hopefully, with this conversation tonight, we are also opening up the conversation, the greater conversation of compassion, understanding, curiosity, and healing, because God, the world needs it right now.
Mhm.
It perpetuates trauma, but so does healing. So we're here to have that conversation. Um, what was that moment for you that was like a pivotal moment for you that moved you in the direction of either working with psychedelic medicines or functional medicine as well?
Um, there were seeds that were planted along the way. Early on, when I was in high school, uh, we had a rash of suicides at our high school, and so they took a survey of the student body and asked, who do you talk to when you're having challenges? And those of us that were our names showed up frequently, we were given the opportunity to become certified peer specialists as teenagers. And so we went through an 80-hour CPS course, 40 hours of classroom, 40 hours of practicum, and then we embedded back into our student body as peer support specialists. And with those additional tools, the suicide rate in our high school went to zero, and it was really a great program. My daughter's high school here in Conifer, Colorado, actually has a similar program, positive peer support. Um, so so that early education, I definitely planted the seeds, and I continued doing that work in coaching and mentoring in my military career. And then when I left the military, I was struggling with complex PTSD, and even with all of this knowledge, yeah, it's one thing to have the knowledge, it's another thing to be able to integrate it and apply it internally. And that's that connection between the prefrontal cortex and the amygdala, and getting that thing reprogrammed. And I didn't necessarily understand how we do that. And I think that's where a lot of frustration, a lot of pain, a lot of shame, guilt, and things when we know, yet, yet we stay in old patterns and old programs. And so trying to figure out how to crack that code. And so when I left the military, I started doing a lot of veteran advocacy work, and I saw, unfortunately, the pharmaceutical model of care was not working. We were seeing suicide rates increasing, and saw a lot of my peers on being put on what I later came to term the polypharmaceutical lobotomy. And it wasn't really addressing issues. It was simply masking the issues and just trying to address symptoms. And trying to address symptoms is kind of playing whack-a-mole instead of getting up to the root cause. And so that really led me down a path of exploring things that were not, we'll call it pharmacologically based. And also, when I was younger, I was mentored by an indigenous elder from the Nez Perce tribe. And so some of those, being exposed to those, the ancient ways, those seeds were planted early on as well. And even my time in the special operations community, we were provided access to hypnotherapists that helped us kind of bifurcate trauma, move it over to a side, and that allowed us to operate more efficiently. So I had exposure along the way to what we call non-standard methodologies, and so that led me on a path of curiosity. I started working with veterans using cannabis to help them wean off of opiates that they had become addicted to, primarily by VA prescription, OxyContin. In from the mid 2000s to 2012 was very prevalently prescribed, and ultimately would create dependence. Then there was a tolerance built to the medicine. Um, Veterans were unable to get their dosages increased, so they would turn to the streets, start buying oxy, and then figure out, at the time it was heroin as opposed to fentanyl. Now heroin was much more prevalent, and it was cheaper, so they could get a tarball of heroin for about a quarter of the price of one oxy pill, and then they rolled over and started shooting heroin. So there was a group of us that got together and started using cannabis to help them wean off of their opiates, and also used it prior to talk therapy, and found that it downregulated the sympathetic nervous response. It put a pause on vagus nerve reactivity, increased parasympathetic response, and they were able to start processing trauma. And so that started me on the path, and worked with that for a period of time. And then I've still had the stigma in my mind about psychedelics. And then uh, did some other work, decided to really step full tilt into the mental wellness space. Looked at opening a ketamine clinic, which was the natural progression. Went to a MAPS conference to fill in some gaps about about ketamine assisted therapy. Phil Wolfson had some courses going that I wanted to go and learn from. And I will tell you, I thought, okay, yeah, I'm gonna go. There's gonna be a bunch of hairy armpits and drum circles and tie dye, and I'll cut my way through that, get the information I need, and leave. I was still very judgmental, and then I showed up and I found a veteran community there, and it was like cutting brush for seems like forever all by myself, and I break into a clearing and there's all of these people with patches on their uniforms that I recognize, and it's like, oh my gosh, they're I'm not alone. And I think ultimately that's what it is when we can have the lived experience, and when I can look another person in the eye that served, and that's really what led me on the path. It's like, bro, I got you. I've been where you are. Let me show you what's on the other side. And yeah, it's scary. And I'm not going to do it for you. And I'm not going to drag you across the finish line here, but I'll walk beside you. And so that's what I try to emulate in the work I do now. We can't do it for people. That's why I have a lighthouse as my screensaver. We're not rescue swimmers. All we can do is shine light and help people find their way if they want to find their way. And the psychedelic medicines are not a silver bullet. They're not a cure. Yeah, we've been lied to that there's a magic pill anywhere. There is no such thing as a magic pill. The psychedelic medicines are simply guides and catalysts to help us do the work. It's WD-40 on a rusty bolt. You can squirt it with WD-40 and it makes it easier to turn the wrench, but you still have to turn the wrench. And that's, you know, so that's what we do. Those of us in this field, we're mechanics, and we're helping people find how to fix their stuff.
Yeah. And then fine tune it in between, right? It's like I like that you're emphasizing again on the integration work and the work that people do in between. Um, Thank you. I know that on a previous call with you, you mentioned other even psychedelic medicines, but I wanted to pick your brain tonight on what are some of the classic psychedelics or specific medicines that work specifically for depression, anxiety, PTSD, because we do have a broad audience here tonight. So some people
Mhm.
have experienced psychedelic and some are still in that beginning of their journey phase and questioning what is the right medicines for them.
Sure. Sure. In my experience, and I've, to be able to speak with authority, what I don't ever want people to think, I don't like being categorized with those wearing the white lab coat that never experienced medicine and pushing pills across the table, saying, "Here, take this because the pharma rep said that it'll do these things for you." Um, I firmly believe that helping our community heal requires lived experience. And so, um, in my experience, what I have found is that some of the synthetic psychedelics, LSD, MDMA, ketamine, they have utility, but they're limited in their capacity to really help with deep mental wellness healing, deep moral injury healing, deep emotional wounding healing. I find that the plant-based medicines have much more capacity for that. Um, the medicines that I work with primarily are psilocybin. That was the universal medicine of our ancestors. Psilocybin grew on every continent, and so we've all had, we all have an epigenetic connection to psilocybin. I work a lot with Amanita muscaria. That is the Mario mushroom, or the mushroom that the Smurfs lived in. That's why they were always happy, because they were living in an Amanita mushroom, right?
We're gonna see them around Christmas time. They're gonna
Yeah, and again, we've got a long history with Amanita muscaria. It grows on most continents. And each one has a different mechanism of action, so it really depends on what we're dealing with. I also work with Kanna, which is a South African succulent, which was imported by the Dutch into Europe from the 13th through the 17th century. So those of European descent most likely have ancestral connection to that medicine as well. I work with Blue Lotus. Blue Lotus is a beautiful medicine that was exported from Egypt from about 500 BC forward. So again, that's another medicine that's had worldwide exposure. Those are the primary medicines that I work with. Each one has a different major mechanism of action. So Kana tends to be a broad spectrum medicine. It's what we call an adaptogenic. So although it's primarily a serotonin analog, it does have impact on your dopamine, your GABA, your NMDA, and your glutamate receptors. So we call it an adaptogenic because it's a medicine that goes where you need it. It's anti-inflammatory, it's antihistamine, and it's very gentle. It's an empathogenic medicine as well. It's a heart opener, but it's very gentle. So
Mhm.
those that are interested in starting down this path that want to use something that's not scheduled, Kana is legal in all 50 states. It's, yeah, you can consider it a supplement. It is less psychoactive than coffee, and much healthier for you because coffee, actually inhibits the feedback loop in your body. Coffee doesn't give you energy. It just gets your body to not communicate back that you're tired. That's why you crash when you come off of coffee. Um, so Kana tends to be a very supportive medicine. I work when I'm working with patients that are looking to taper off of their SSRIs or SNRIs. I'll introduce Kana as a scaffolding medicine because it's just beautiful. For those that have experience with MDMA, it's like a very gentle MDMA, but it's also very supportive, and you don't end up with what some call the vulnerability hangover that can sometimes come on the backside of using MDMA. I use Amanita muscaria. I recommend Amanita muscaria for those that are looking to taper off of benzodiazepines. Amanita is a GABA semi-agonist. The primary alkaloid in it is muscimol. Amanita muscaria. There's a lot of people that say, "Oh, it's poisonous." Well, if you eat it wet, yes, it needs to be dried properly, and it needs to be sourced from those that are skilled, that not only in foraging and harvesting, but also preparation, because misidentification of that particular mushroom. There are a lot of them that grow here in Colorado, and right next to them will grow angels of death, which is another variety of the fly Aragnac, which there's a reason they call it the angel of death. So you need to be careful in your sourcing. However, that proper medicine, when it is Amanita muscaria or Amanita pantherina, beautiful supportive medicines, very, very healing, very supportive, and they are also unscheduled. Um, so those Blue Lotus, another beautiful medicine. It is a dopamine semi-agonist. So I use that with patients that are looking to taper off of pain meds, taper off of sugar, and taper off of social media, because then all of those activate your dopamine receptors. And being a semi-agonist, it provides scaffolding to allow weaning off of those things without major cravings. Not saying that it's a silky smooth path, but it is very much more doable when you got these plant medicines supporting you.
Yeah, thank you so much for, your relationship with them and covering that with such depth. Um, I want to ask you one last question, and then I'm going to ask you to share what you've got going in your life. I know you are in
Mhm.
Colorado, so we actually had a question that came in about the legitimacy of like having to leave the country or not. So I think you may be the right person to answer that. So someone is asking, how do I begin on this journey? I have also been wanting to do this without having to leave the country.
Sure. So the state of Colorado with Proposition 122 decriminalized the use of plant medicines. For 2024, 2025, it is psilocybin primarily. And then the future medicines will be mescaline and ayahuasca and I believe mescaline, but not peyote specifically, which allows for San Pedro or Wachuma as well. Um, and really, it's also been as far as levels of enforcement, it's put at the lowest level of enforcement. So you're going to get a parking ticket before anybody cites you for utilization of plant-based medicines here. So um, with that, if there is curiosity, then or a desire to work with the medicine, then I suggest you do your research. You find those here in Colorado. There are quite a few organizations that are offering healing retreats here. Um, for we do that work here as well. So you're welcome to reach out. I'm always willing to share information and help you find a facilitator that meets your needs. It's somebody that you can feel a connection with, because ultimately doing this work is, we hear a lot set and setting, and that was something that was missing in the psychedelic revolution of the 60s, but we're very much in tune with in the psychedelic renaissance here in 2024. And setting is physical safety, set is mental and emotional safety. So you need to be in a place where you feel safe. And in safety comes healing.
Mhm.
So again, I'm happy to have those conversations, happy to direct. I've got relationships with a lot of facilitators. Colorado is in the process of launching psychedelic integration specialist training courses. I'm faculty for one of the organizations that will be launching some of those courses in the end of January. There are healing retreats being offered. We host healing retreats here in Buffalo Creek that are focused on the veteran first responder population and their families, not exclusively, though primarily. And we do have benefactors and benevolent organizations that provide scholarshiping to help offset some of the cost for people to come for those deep healing retreats.
That is so wonderful. Thank you so much for all the work that you do. Again, we're going to make sure to include your links with a follow-up email after this. Dr. Lance, thank you for tuning in and sharing your precious time and wisdom with us tonight. Keep up the good work, and I hope we get to see you maybe in Denver for PsyCon or sometime in the field. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you for the work you're doing, because it's the work you're doing, the pioneering work that allows the light to spread to different places, so that we can help those that need the healing find the healing. So thank you.
It's beautiful. Thank you. We receive here in Nevada, and it's so beautiful to find our allies and people who have, succeeded in other states. So we're learning from each other and creating this together. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hmm. All right, everyone. Without further ado, where is Christina Thomas? I'm going to bring you on here. At Penn, here we go. So Christina is a founder and advocates mind, body, spirit medicine woman. Thank you so much for being here. Um, Thank you, Christina. Let me just make sure that your video is on as well. I want to see your face.
Here we
Um,
go.
there she
Hey.
is. Thank
Blessings, everyone. So nice to see everyone.
Christina, thank you. It was such a highlight meeting you at MCon in Las Vegas this past month. And your story, you are just such um, you're really like an example of how someone turns their life experiences, adversities, everything that you got into advocacy and making this world better, like paying it forward. Incredible. I wanted to, you have so many things that you do and so many experiences. So I wanted to turn it to you and ask you what piece of your experience that you would like to share with us. Again, maybe starting with a hardship that was turned into wisdom. But what is the piece that's coming to you that you would like to share with us tonight?
Well, first, I want to say that we are so blessed to have heard the stories ahead of this because it's going to tie it all together. So it was very intuitive in placing it. So everything that you just heard is the complementary modalities and alternatives that got me into this. So the scenario that brought me into plant medicine, I am raised indigenous in the woodlands, off grid. So I had a medicine, I come from that. So every few months we had a medicine man and we had someone come around that would bring the plant medicine and I would help forage and create all of that. I had so many different species of trees and plants and animals. We had our own ecosystem there. So it was very much natural for me to come back to this. Now, fast forward, I'm a 4-generation veteran. So with that being said, I grew up with a Vietnam veteran father in the VA system with him. So I know that there was this quote unquote brokenness that I'd like to say genetically just kind of flowed into this mindset in my consciousness of I'm not going to be okay. And so I fast forward, my brother and I go into the military. Both of us went into the Air Force as security forces. And I ended up getting cross trained over into logistics. And my first duty station within the first 6 months, I was kidnapped out of my dorm room and in the middle of the night on my birthday. And so I escaped my kidnappers and I got back. And then I said, I'm not going to stick around for this. So I decided to go out of cycle and go to Afghanistan immediately after my kidnapping. And energetically, you can't run from what you can't run from. And then I ran into another assault and another attempted kidnapping in overseas. And so that was a repetitive replay of a cycle, almost like a simulation. And getting back, not having the mental health, not having a way to, and of course, you know, I'm not like my father or like Dr. Lance. So I wasn't special forces. I didn't have a hypnotherapist there to take that level of trauma and seriousness and flip it so that I can continue to move forward. So what I experienced was the unraveling of the mind and the body in front of everyone. And so from that process of unhealed massive trauma, coupled with what we like to call complex post-traumatic stress, because not very many of us can escape childhood without some level of trauma. But some of us that go into the military are those very specific ones with extreme traumas from our childhood. And we're trying to make it better for our second portion of our adult life is what we think. And so I move forward through this process and I find afterwards that there was individuals that came down and they started a whole process for me. Now, fast forward, most of us in the military, we just keep moving. And so I got married very quickly after, got pregnant very quickly after, moved, changed my name, changed my location, completely had a completely wraparound change while still with this mental destruction going on within. And it all started attacking my body. So that mind body connection actually works. So 50 surgeries and procedures later, I go through a process of change that I look like this, but before this was a version, a whole nother extra 100 pounds of a person that was pharmaceutically, opioid, neurologically, psychologically addicted to over 45 pills every single day, DMARDs, biologicals, infusions, and hooked up to a bag. I had no livelihood. I had nothing but my sorrows to sit in because I couldn't get up because my knees weren't working and nor was my spine. So I had to sit with that. So there was no unraveling of that level of trauma for someone that has to sit in their mind locked in this ruminating experience. So you lose your identity, you lose your self connection, you lose your chemical homeostasis because you're full of chemicals and pumped with toxins that allow you no way to feel. I go into the VA medically retired, and I am now their research patient. And I am at the VA 3-4 days out of the week, whether for mental health or physical health. And they are going to give me the best psychologists and neuropsychologists, orthopedic surgeons, rheumatologists, and hematologists to fix it. But there was nothing to fix. It was to address this person was hurt and to acknowledge you got hurt and it's okay for you to be hurt right now. Somebody needed to tell me that it's okay. We have trauma in this life and we don't need to run from that. There's a duality here. And I used to say my trauma is my triumph. And I get to understand what it is to appreciate an experience of being alive because I allowed myself to listen to individuals that had agendas over the research of me staying broken. So over time, I got into this evidence-based therapy and I began to research and had doctors that would explain. So for 22 years, I studied with the lead practitioners all over the world and all of these VAs. And I allowed them to tell me about each body system that broke down. And I began to understand that there was something even greater going on. Fast forward to Vegas. And my son looked at me and he said, Mommy, he just was losing me. He was losing me every day. And he saw Dr. Sanjay Gupta with a series of weed. And I had just had some surgery and he could not. My ex-husband was deployed because I was mill to mill. So I was raising him alone while he also had acute conditions. And he tells me, he says, Mommy, do you know what weed is? And I'm like, what? What do you know about weed? And I'm having this moment. I have a bag. I have all these pills sitting around. And I'm so stigmatized to think, how dare he talk about weed? And here I am with heroin sitting on the dash on the headboard, just bottles of heroin. If I'm being very clear, that is molecularly one of the biggest drug dealer that I could ever had was my doctor. And so I had all these drugs around him, all in these containers, but he brings up weed and I just can't wrap my head around. That's not going to work. Little did I know. So I went to the College of Pacific Health and Science. And then I started studying functional medicine, integrative medicine, and complementary alternatives. Fast forward, we got stationed here. He took over for F-22s. And on the sign in the billboard there is Dr. Reefer. And my son goes, Mommy, there it is. You got to go. And we do. And so I say, you're staying with your dad. And I go make this appointment, the best appointment I could have ever had in my life with a functional medicine and all 7 files. Because when I got medically retired, I had already started surgeries. So I had 7 files to unpack with these 2 beautiful cannabis practitioner, functional medicine, naturopathic medicine doctors. It says, wait a minute, darling, let's think about this. Hold on. This isn't going to go good for you. We got to reconsider some things here. This is flooding the receptors. And I had been going to college. So at this point I had higher education. So it wasn't that I wasn't aware. I was studying this whole time. And so she says, let's try to approach it differently. So we approached it differently. I found out that I had the autoimmune conditions to deteriorate my joints. And I'm reminding everyone the mental health chemical imbalance is feeding these diseases inside of me because I can't feel that I'm hurt and I can't articulate my behaviors. And so I do something that nobody thinks that I'll be able to do. I have to have spinal discectomy and fusion. And this is like surgery number 20 something. And I tell my neurosurgeon, I said, I'm doing this. I'm taking me off of all of these opioids. I'm doing this with cannabis alone. I found a way to alchemize this and I'm going to do it on my own. Now, nobody believed me, but I walked out of that hospital room and I never took another opioid again because that was 10 years of hardcore medications. And I healed my spinal surgery, discectomy infusion, and got off of all of that medication at the same time due to the terpenoid, flavonoid, and cannabinoid combination with other plant medicine coupled with behavioral health, evidence-based therapy, physical therapy, occupational therapy, oxygen therapy, and water therapy. And I was done with spinal surgery and discectomy in 6 weeks and walking around and writing and doing what I needed to do. Because you can heal faster if you can feel and you can get back into your functions. So it's the most successful surgery and the most painful one that I ever did, but I had far less pain on naturopathic medicine with meditation and practices than I did doped up laying in the bed where my son was watching his mom just be an addict, chemical addict. So that took me to another level where I partnered with Dr. Carmen Jones and Wildflower Medicine and became her cannabis healing mentor and consultant for her patients. From that peer support coupled, I became the congressionally mandated chair for Southern Nevada's mental health, and then began to help individuals in the mental health clinic under the VA to understand that evidence-based therapies also could give them an opportunity to heal and move away from the systemic oppression for the veteran to feel that they had to be broken and addicted to these pharmaceutical medications to keep the doors open. So I will say it. So I said no more. And from that, I advocated for every single case that came across my desk that wanted to figure out, how do I get into cannabis? I need to try psilocybin, San Pedro, ayahuasca. Where am I going, Chris? I had people going from one end of the other end of the spectrum off of me just healing and being a tower of light to say that I did it. I could give you the tools and I could give you all the list of the evidence-based therapies, but you could do this too. I'm giving you back the autonomy to know that you have the identity beyond the militarization, that you are a spiritual, ethereal being with the epigenetic possibility of changing anything. And so I started studying quantum physics and epigenetics. Dr. Bruce Limpton, Dr. Joe Dispenza, and coupled all of that with the plant medicine to be able to not only have a journey, it is the wraparound, not just that setting, but what are you doing to change the behavior that got you into the space? Most people are looking for an up feeling of, I want to feel alive, but they don't realize the consumption of their life and what they have applied within their lives is what is making them sick. And they may not need plant medicine. They may just have, they don't realize the SSRI is not just in the brain, it's in the stomach too. Most of the individuals have chronic disease and they have gut issues. You're not even absorbing the necessary serotonin that you need in the regular foods because they're poison. So it may be just your lifestyle that has created such a hindrance from you reaching that clarity point. And we can actually look at not just the set and the settings, but the thoughts, the mental health capacity of the person to realize they can evolve, they're not broken, and take back their life again. I think I put that in a box and put you right at 6:30.
You're incredible. Look at you. Oh my God, Christina, what a story. What a story. And I can really see how like you've done a full circle. And what we're talking about, like, mind, body, spirit, it's really your work, your life's work. So we
It's
can't
why I'm alive,
put it in
honestly.
different compartments. Yeah, we are at time. I mean, I want to book you for another time to talk more. And definitely, I had so many more questions for you, especially that full circle of, you having such a deep connection with these plant medicines early on in your life, and then having all these life's experiences to get to where you are again. And I love talking about the sustainability aspect of these medicines with you, and the right mindset. And again, the work that we do in between and approaching these with such deep reverence. So I want to thank everybody so much. Christina, is there anything that you want to share with us in terms of your offerings or your work that you are currently working on in the world? And I will follow up with a lot of your links with our participants.
Well, we are taking a break, like for advocacy. As you know, in Nevada, we have legislation every 2 years. And so we are up to do some legislative work. So we are taking this pause November, December to give back. So we're doing a turkey giveaway in Nevada on Saturday with our foundation. So I want to make sure that everyone knows in the living experience. So Veterans Advocacy Council has over 600 individuals and organizations and partnerships. I don't have a board of directors. I have a board of organizations. So individuals that we find that can fill in the gaps from the actual systemic issues that we see are causing these gaps in care, because it's about the whole health. So you can reach me, if you need help, you can go to the website at veteransadvocacycouncil.com and it says get help. It'll ask you, what is it that you've done and what you're looking for. If you're looking for me as a facilitator or a guide and doing mind-body medicine and what that, just a conversation, looking an assessment of your life, you can find me at livingfreesouls.com and we can go through that. I don't just serve, we're veteran ran. I serve the entire community. So I will be at the National Cannabis Festival again coming up next year, so 2025. And of course, as you know, with psilocybin being legalized in DC and all of this, changes, we want to make sure that everyone here knows where these national movements are going. I could tell you it's a festival. It is not the medicinal side. And that can always be something that we talk about in the future, but I definitely want individuals to know about those large area movements, because it takes those levels of movement to move legislation. They have to see the evidence. They have to see the data. It's not just about us here. It's about what you say. If we have this many people depressed and looking for answers in mental wellness, then we should show up to what we know can be solutions for those mental wellness and support that. So I just encourage everyone to donate, support, get involved with the coalition, and definitely want to see you, Dr. Lance and Ben, and get in touch with all of these beautiful folks, because that's what it's about. It's about coalition. It's about community. It's about connection. The more you can find a mirror neuron, the better off you can see yourself and evolve to the person you need to be.
Mm. You wrapped it up so well, Christina. Thank you so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We'll be in touch. Oh, I want to thank everyone for spending some time with us tonight, having this important conversation on mental health and really taking responsibility in this work and education. So again, thank you so much from the Nevada Coalition of Psychedelic Medicines. If you can support our legislative efforts right now, we are in that time. The link is posted here, and we're going to also follow up with our social media accounts and just building community, staying in touch, having these conversations. That's where it's at. Thank you so much. Take good care of yourselves. Bye, everyone.